Thanks so much for joining me. For all you true crime fans out there, a new season of my podcast, Mystery and Murder Analysis by Dr. Phil, is out. We have been gone for a little while, but we are back bringing you some really cutting-edge stories. My goal is for every one of these stories to add something to your understanding about some of these monsters that walk among us. In the new season, we are taking a close look at Gabby Petito, the heartbreaking case of Gabby Petito, whose life was tragically cut short by her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. How could a pair living so-called perfect lives be hiding such dark secrets? Getting to know Gabby while diving into the psychology of unhealthy relationships, were there red flags? Mystery and Murder Analysis by Dr. Phil. His promise of till death do us part seems pretty chilling. Available on Apple Podcast and YouTube. You guys all remember that story. You don't want to miss this. And thank you for subscribing and sharing the news. Mystery and Murder Analysis by Dr. Phil is available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. Ted Bundy is one of America's most infamous serial killers. Dubbed the Lady Killer. Some say he could have committed 100 or more during his reign of terror. But there was one secret victim, one who got away, one who has never told her story until now. Ronda Stapley was a young, innocent college student when she accepted a ride from a handsome stranger. When she got into his old Volkswagen, she had no idea she was sitting next to America's most notorious serial killer and was about to look death right in the face.
I encountered one of the most serious serial killers, and I live to tell about it.
Nobody has ever heard your story before.
We're back at this spot where this horrible thing happened. He leaned in really close. I thought that he was going to kiss me. He probably strangled me to unconsciousness 5 or 6 different times.
He said very quietly, "Do you know what? I'm going to kill you." I thought I was going to die right there in the car. But he had other plans. He said, "Don't die on me yet, because you would miss the best part."
Welcome back to an all-new Mystery and Murder Analysis by Dr. Phil, where we dive deep into some of the most infamous criminal minds and headline-making true crime news stories. In our last episode, I started to share the incredible story of Rhonda Stapley, who survived a brutal abduction and attack by none other than infamous serial killer Ted Bundy, known as Jack the Ripper of the United States. Rhonda gave me an extremely rare, personal, moment-by-moment account of her harrowing experience going head-to-head against this monster. On today's episode, we'll hear about Rhonda's astonishing escape and how this horrible ordeal changed the way she valued her own life, and the deeply personal reasons she planned on keeping this nightmare a secret that she would take to her grave, and what finally made her change her mind. Through her first-hand testimony, we gain a rare glimpse into Bundy's twisted psyche. And boy, is it twisted. And how his reign of terror escalated into the heinous crimes that would shock not just the United States, but the entire world. Look, this is a disturbing story. And it obviously contains references to sexual assault and violence. This is a cautionary tale. I know it's interesting, but I hope it also is a warning, an alert to you, your daughters, your granddaughters. When we left off on our last episode, Rhonda had told me about meeting Bundy near her college campus, where he had been cruising around in his car. Now, here's the deal. Rhonda loved hiking, and she had gotten some new boots, and she decided to kind of break them in. So she put them on near campus where she lived and decided to walk into kind of the town square area to see how they felt, if they were okay, before she went on a really long hike. She walked in and decided, yeah, these are okay. These were serious hiking boots, and they had leather laces on them, wrapped 3 times around the top. She was a hiker. She was waiting for a bus to go back. She thought, okay, I've tested these out, so I don't need to do that anymore. She was going to just hop a bus and get back home, save some time. And a well-practiced Bundy, I mean really well-practiced at this, sadly he had done it before, pulls up and uses his charm and his psychopathic skills to disarm her into letting her guard down and getting into his car. So what began as just, hey, a ride home by a good-looking, friendly guy turned into a kidnapping. A kidnapping where he took Rhonda to a secluded picnic area in a Utah canyon where he proceeded to beat, rape, humiliate, and repeatedly strangle and then resuscitate her. So now you're on the ground.
Now I'm on the ground. And he sat on me, on my stomach and chest, mashing me so that there's no air. And I said, get off, I can't breathe. And he said, you have to relax, and if you stop struggling, I'll let you breathe. And so I held still for a minute, and he did let me breathe a little bit, kind of scooted back on me so he wasn't smashing me so much. And then he put his hand over my nose and mouth and cut off my air. And I passed out again, and he sort of enjoyed just watching me die. He would do that over and over. At one point he asked me, how would I prefer to be strangled? How would I prefer to suffocate? Would you prefer it like this? And he put his hand over my nose and mouth again. Or is it better for you like this? And he put his hands on my throat again. I just thought I was gonna die.
And how many times do you think he took you to unconsciousness and then brought you back?
Probably at least 5, maybe 6.
Really? And did you get the sense that he knew how far to go without killing you?
Yeah, I think it was a game.
And then what happened?
The last time I was coming from unconsciousness to consciousness, lying on the picnic table, he was slapping my face again, trying to wake me up again. And he said, good girl, you don't want to die yet. Don't die on me yet, because you would miss the best part. And he grabbed me by my boot to the end of the picnic table, pulled my pants down and raped me. And just as that was finishing, he leaned forward again and put his hands around my throat and was choking me again. And at that point, I didn't struggle. I decided I was dead. I was just going to wait until it was over.
Now, this was all a sick power game of torture that he needed to feel aroused and superior. And obviously, this is something that goes well beyond just someone impulsively grabbing somebody and taking them off to have his way. This got into the complexity of who he was, the dark side of who he was. Now, as Rhonda lay there, the victim of this sick power game of torture that he needed to get aroused and feel superior, she knew to the core of her soul that she had encountered the devil himself, and that she was at that moment in her life that she was going to die. What happened next was nothing short of a miracle.
He probably strangled me to unconsciousness 5 or 6 different times. The last time I woke up, I was on the picnic table. I came to and can see a little light coming from the dome light of the car. He was probably looking for the crowbar to make sure I was dead. I just thought, run. I was still lightheaded from being unconscious. I didn't notice that I was running towards a river.
Miraculously, Rhonda had escaped from Bundy's clutches. But her struggle for survival was far from over. Now she would have to face the harsh Utah elements as she slid into a frigid, rocky, and rapidly moving river. How far did you fall before you hit the water?
I think it's probably about 6 feet. I kind of slid down there. It was like stop your heart coldness water. Just all of a sudden I'm in the water. And I'm not feeling safe yet. I'm feeling like I'm drowning. I thought that I was still gonna die.
You ultimately stopped against a grate, right?
There was some kind of a metal grate to catch tree limbs and debris going down the river.
How did you get out of the river?
I climbed out using the debris as kind of a little stepping stone.
After using all of her strength to climb out of the river, Rhonda was terrified to go up to the road, sure that Bundy would catch up to her in his car. Spurred on by sheer will, Rhonda also felt a new emotion rising within her. Anger. Fury at what this man had just put her through. She could not let him win, not now. Now you've climbed out of the river. Do you have any idea where you are?
I know that I'm about 4 miles up the canyon. So I followed the river and just walked out of the canyon. I was terrified. I thought he would find me, and if he did, he would stab me or choke me or run over me or...
You thought if you got on the road, he would come driving by.
He would.
Coming up, that split-second window when he had left her alone had been her saving grace. But she knew if he had the chance, he would come back to finish the job, to kill her. And there was no time to waste. Despite some post-election optimism, Wall Street is already bracing for a rough rest of 2025. When Warren Buffett starts dumping blue-chip stocks and stacking up cash, you've got to ask yourself, what does he see coming? I trust Preserve Gold to safeguard my accounts, and I urge you to do the same. They're the only precious metals company I recommend. When uncertainty is this high, smart people look for stability. That's why physical gold and silver might just be what your finances need. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue through 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil, that's DRPHIL, to 50505 today. There was really rough terrain. I mean, they were up in the mountains now. And she was having to hide and crawl through brush and jump behind trees every time she heard what could possibly even be a car, because she knew, as angry and enraged as she was, if he got his hands on her again, he was too big, he was too strong. So while she was fighting with the will to live, she knew she had to stay away from him. And it was a long way back to town. Because remember, she was already quite a ways from where she lived into town. Now he had taken her off into the woods and up the mountain. So she had a long way to go, and of course had not paid close attention to exactly where she was. But Rhonda walked all the way back to her campus. She said she was a staggering 10 miles away. And even having escaped, her situation remained perilous. Think about it. She had been strangled, beaten, raped, and nearly eviscerated by the elements. The river water was freezing, and she was trying to get back home, shivering, soaking wet, cold, and definitely in shock. The whole way back, she was still terrified that Bundy would find her. Her heart would race as she heard nearby cars on the road, and she often had to duck behind trees, dive into bushes, fearing that he could just jump out of the shadows at any point. Only once the sun had started to rise did she reach her dormitory. That split-second window, when he had left her alone, had been her saving grace. But she knew If he had the chance, he would come back to finish the job, to kill her, and there was no time to waste. When he had let his guard down, Rhonda had the presence of mind and the courage to make a run for it. She knew in that moment that it was her one shot, her only chance to survive. Even if he might catch her, she knew that she had to try. So this was a whole process, and her animal instincts kicked in. Now, understand, she had been unconscious several different times, but that fight or flight reaction kicked in. That will to live had kicked in. There's this rush of adrenaline. That's how your brain works. It sends a message to your adrenal glands, and your body starts getting flooded. And this hormonal surge goes to your heart, your lungs, goes into your muscles. It's a body's way of helping you respond to danger. And it did in that moment, that second, and that would carry her on this long journey. But think about this now. You have to understand, if you can put yourself in her place, she has been completely ambushed. She starts thinking, all right, I'm getting a ride home from this guy. He looks nice. Remember I talked about in episode 1 how positive bias does disarm us. We think, hey, this is okay. And then all of a sudden, that mask comes down, and behind it lurks this evil individual. So you're in shock. He's not in shock. He's done this before. It's well practiced. And then you're overwhelmed physically. You're punched in the stomach. Your breath goes away. You're punched in the face. Your nose and mouth are covered, and you're losing consciousness. And then you're being raped. And then you're punched in the head again, and you're going in and out of consciousness. You're disoriented. Every single decision she made in those terrifying moments was a life or death choice. She may have made it home in one piece that night, but she wasn't the same girl who had left campus that afternoon. Think how much transpired, what life experience had shaped and changed her in those few hours. She certainly didn't consider herself lucky to be alive. She fought for her life in those moments. Just think about it. Did she wake up that morning thinking she was going to be off in the woods, raped, punched, strangled, floating in a frigid river, crawling through the woods? No. How do you wrap your head around that? How do you experience it? And then she's fighting for her life and getting away. When she returned home, her roommates weren't there. She did what she thought she should do at the time. She bathed twice, scrubbing herself. She wanted to scrub the filth off of her. She then put aside her ruined clothes and got into bed, emotionally and physically depleted from the ordeal. In the aftermath of her assault and attempted murder, this young, innocent woman kept her horrific attack and incredible escape a total secret. Her main reasons? One of them was an overwhelming feeling of shame. Raised in the Mormon faith, Rhonda had been a virgin at the time of the attack, and all of her prior LDS teachings had emphasized the importance of virtue and purity before marriage, both of which Rhonda felt had been stolen by Bundy. She felt she was no longer worthy of God's love or any man's love because of what Bundy had done to her. She was also riddled with self-criticism. She scolded herself for getting into a stranger's car, for not knowing better. She was blaming herself. She was eaten up with shame and guilt. And she was scared about what would happen if her story came to light. She worried that her mother would make her drop out of school and come home. and that her life as she knew it would come to a screeching halt. She feared that if her fellow classmates discovered what had happened to her, that a trail of whispers would ensue behind her back, that she would become known forevermore as the girl who got raped. It was just heartbreaking to hear that Rhonda felt like she couldn't report this monster, because this was all the way back in 1974. Now, think about that. That was 50 years ago. And while we thankfully have come a long way as a society in terms of removing harmful stigmas surrounding sexual violence, we know victims still struggle to report cases. In fact, as of 2024, according to the Department of Justice, still only 310 out of every 1,000 sexual assaults are reported to the police. That means 2 out of 3 go unreported, with many survivors choosing not to report because they feared retaliation, believed the police would not do anything to help, or they would have to go through all of this. They would be blamed, it would be turned on them and twisted on them. Coming up, knowing that she could identify him, she went back to the one place that she knew he could find her if he was looking for her. Let's discuss preparedness, because we know emergencies happen when we least expect them, but instead of just taking it, we can prepare. Let's discuss Jace Case, one of your most important preparation tools. With Jace Case, you'll have emergency prescription medications on hand right when you need them. Think about it. Ever been caught off guard? Whether it's a sudden illness or a travel hiccup, the right medications can make all the difference. Jace Case is designed to take that worry off your plate, so when a minor health issue pops up, it doesn't turn into a major problem. Don't let unforeseen circumstances derail your plans or your peace of mind. Live with confidence. Take charge with Jace today. Visit jace.com and use code PHIL for a discount on your order, and get emergency antibiotics on hand for the moment you need them. That's JASE.com, code PHIL, PHIL. Think back to how bad it was in 1974. We certainly weren't as open and enlightened about it then as we hope we are now. Just to kind of put things in reference for you, you think back to 1974 so you can kind of wrap your mind around this. Gerald Ford was president back then. Biggest TV shows were All in the Family, MASH, Happy Days. Top songs of the time were The Way We Were by Barbra Streisand, Benny and the Jets by Elton John. Big stories were the Watergate scandal. The Vietnam War was still going on, but starting to wind down. That's how long ago things were. That was the environment Rhonda was feeling shame and guilt, thinking about going to the police. There weren't social workers teeming around the police stations at the time so much as there are today. So she's not only dealing with the emotional aftermath of being raped and nearly murdered, she's also crippled by fear. So you get back to civilization. Where did you get to ultimately?
I walked all night to my apartment on the university campus.
You walked a hell of a long way.
Yes.
After being horrifically brutalized. Were you still worried he would find you?
Yeah, I was ducking behind trees, and whenever any kind of car would turn toward me, my heart rate would go up and I would just know I was going to die.
Is it still dark when you get home?
It's starting to get light. When I got to the bottom of campus, kind of on my turf, and I'm feeling more empowered and more anger than fear at that point.
She only knew her attacker as Ted. In retrospect, we know about Ted Bundy. We know who he is. We know everything he did now, but she didn't know anything at all about that. She just knew Ted. And while his haunting face was an image now burned in her mind, she didn't have all this to go on. But this Ted knew much more about Rhonda. He knew her name. He knew where she attended school. So effectively where she lived. She also revealed to me he still had her belongings. So you go to your apartment. Where are your things?
I had a backpack with my driver's license and student ID, stuff like that. And the backpack I had left probably still in the Volkswagen.
He had your name.
Had my name. He could have found me if he had wanted to.
There is no doubt in the wake of her attack, she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, and it manifested for her in a myriad of ways. She suffered from chronic insomnia. She experienced flashbacks of the attack. She had waves of deep sadness, often just sobbing. She had feelings of shame, guilt that tied into poor self-esteem, incorrectly thinking she's to blame for what happened. Now, not only is she experiencing PTSD, she has fear of his retaliation. Why? Well, he's still out there. She escaped, but he still has the upper hand. Bundy is her real-life boogeyman. Think about this. He's got her information. He's got her driver's license. He's got her address. And she went back to her apartment knowing that he had her address, knowing that she could identify him. She went back to the one place that she knew he could find her if he was looking for her. You make it back to your apartment. What did you do?
Showered, got out of those clothes and bathed, drained the water and bathed again, and then I slept. I was exhausted.
You wake up later that day.
Thinking I've got to do damage control. I got to get my river-ruined clothes off the bathroom floor, and I've got to put on long-sleeve shirts, and I've got to cover my bruises because I don't want anybody to know that this has happened.
Tell me, what's your 21-year-old mind telling you that you have to hide this?
I'm feeling shamed. I'm embarrassed. I feel stupid for having even gotten myself into such a dangerous situation. I should have known better. I thought that if my mother found out, she'd make me drop out of school and go home. I imagine people pointing at me and saying, that's that girl that was raped.
So what goes through her mind at that point? She makes a conscious decision to go to the one place that she knew he could come looking for her. I said there was a change that took place in her. And what was that change? Was that change that she was so devalued, so broken in spirit, so shameful and self-blaming that she said, you know, whatever. Hell, if he comes and gets me, he comes and gets me. Why else would she say, I don't care, I'm just going home. If he comes, he comes. High-risk behavior. When you devalue yourself and think, you know what can they do to me now? I've been raped, beaten, humiliated, soiled, changed forever. I just don't care anymore. She's angry, she's enraged, but some of that rage is at herself. So she goes home and goes to sleep. Now, this seems like a huge contradiction. She doesn't report it, we've talked about why, but she goes home, the one place that he could find her. Now, there is some evidence that she was moving and maybe she would have been harder to locate, harder to find. But it was clear she didn't care. In that moment, in that time, it was kind of like rock bottom. It's like, whatever. What can they do to me that hasn't already been done? Coming up, after her attack, Rhonda would hear news reports about other attacks in different areas where women's bodies were being found. She wondered, of course, was it him? You know, coming home and slipping into my cozy earth pajamas and crawling into bed with their ridiculously soft sheets has transformed my nights into the most relaxing part of my day, all because of Cozy Earth. The Cozy Earth sheets are breathable, so I sleep cooler, and the fabrics are durable. If you haven't tried Cozy Earth yet, you're missing out on what feels like a 5-star hotel at home. With a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, you've got absolutely nothing to lose. Luxury is in reach. Visit CozyEarth.com and use my code PHIL for up to 40% off sheets, towels, pajamas, and more. If you get a post-purchase survey, tell them you heard about Cozy Earth from the Dr. Phil podcast. Sanctuary awaits at Cozy Earth. While Rhonda was sitting across from me telling this story, years after it happened, I was struck not by how she had been broken, but how brave and even-keeled she seemed while recounting the horror she had been through. Now reserved and soft-spoken, it was as though she had found a way to detach herself from that horrible day from her youth. But before long, she expanded upon how Bundy's attack had altered her behavior and the course of her entire life. While it may seem like trauma gets absorbed, like it just settled into our marrow, it always finds a way to mutate and grow, like creeping vines invading and taking hold of who we once were. And for Rhonda, that did mean engaging in behaviors that carried their own danger. As I said, when we devalue ourselves, we sometimes exhibit high-risk behaviors. And she told me that sometimes in the middle of the night, in order to keep her nerves at bay, she would go out for a run all by herself in the middle of the night, knowing that this predator was on the loose. As people value their lives less, we tend to see them engage in high-risk behaviors more.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, I guess I could get killed, but...
What could they do to me that hasn't already been done?
Clearly, this running in the middle of the night was her attempt at taking back some agency over her life. It's not only this pent-up anxiety she's trying to rid her system of, but if you look deeper, was she trying to outrun her past? What's been done to her? What's been taken from her? Is she putting herself out there saying, you want a shot at me? I'm here. High-risk behavior. After her attack, Rhonda would hear news reports about other attacks in different areas where women's bodies were being found. She wondered, of course, was it him? She couldn't be sure. Now remember, she was just 21 years old at this time. She was absolutely panic-stricken. She was firm in her decision about keeping her assault, an assault that caused her great shame, a complete secret. She did not want this to get out. She did not want to become a victim. But soon descriptions of Bundy's likeness, his car, and his methods were starting to circulate. Bundy always seemed a few moves ahead of authorities. He didn't stay in one place for long. Now, Rhonda's naive and she's scared. She truly believed she didn't have much information to add for the police because what was coming out confirmed what she had experienced, but she didn't think she had much to add to it. Still, guilt gnawed at her. Her trauma waxed and waned. It would lie dormant for a time, then it would just rear its ugly head again. This persisted for years. At one point, the sorrow and panic Rhonda felt was so intense that for a time, she self-medicated, even overdosing right after Bundy's future first escape from prison.
I self-medicated.
At one point you overdosed.
Yes, right after his escape, his first escape.
Was it intentional?
Yes. I don't know if I really wanted to die or if I just wanted to stop the pain.
Numerous studies show the link between sexual abuse survivors and substance abuse. And of course, it's not a solution to the problem. But there are multiple reasons why someone would reach for a drink or a bottle of pills in this instance. As I say, I'm not endorsing that. I don't think it's at all a solution, but it's not impossible to understand. It's often seen as a way to cope or escape from the trauma of sexual abuse. Sometimes the pain just gets so intense and the individual doesn't want to go fess up to a doctor or a therapist for fear of being forced to report it. So it's a form of self-medication. It's a way to help deal with low self-esteem and feelings of loneliness because it's a way to dissociate. For just a while, you can go into a fantasy land. You get high or you get loopy, and you don't have to think about it or feel about it. You numb yourself. And it is a manifestation of self-harm and self-destructive behavior. There's a certain part of our brain that's hedonistic. We do seek pleasure, and we tend to avoid sadness or pain. So we're going to seek out some solution, even if it's the wrong one. I've seen it in my work with substance abusers. They do it for a reason. They're trying to escape their reality and give themselves some relief, bring in what feels like joy, but it really isn't. It's a fantasy land. It's a false high. And of course, it doesn't last very long, and it takes more and more of the substance to get back to that high that they wanted. That's the problem. Next time on Mystery and Murder, Ted's terror after Rhonda ran away. He went on a crime spree that she watched unfold on the news. That's next time. Mystery and Murder, Analysis by Dr. Phil is a podcast series where I take an in-depth look at crime cases and investigations with bizarre circumstances, like the killer thorn of Gypsy Rose, and The Devil Beside Me, the Chris Watts story, husband, father, killer. All of these episodes of Mystery and Murder, Analysis by Dr. Phil are out right now on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Subscribe for free so you don't miss an episode.